Okay, we're actually live, finally. Thank you everyone for your patience and the technical difficulties we were having with my computer and Facebook. So thank you everyone for your patience. We are here with J. Russ. We're going to be start doing once a month talks with J. Russ on a different topic, usually related to free flying, but also just skydiving and stuff in general. So today he's going to be going over a bit of tunnel versus sky, like learning in the tunnel versus learning in the sky.
Cool. Okay, so first, I think that last time we did one of these, people had good questions. So if you have questions as we go, it's actually really helpful for me too, just to kind of see what people are interested in. I opened up the chat log that's on the right side of my screen. So hopefully when people type something, I will be able to see it. So if anybody wants to type something as a test, that'd be great just to see. Okay, so flying in the tunnel versus flying in the sky, as just a discussion point, at this point, tunnels are so common around the world that it's and they've transformed the way that we are as skydivers and the skill set that we have. That it's pretty uncommon for people to not be ready to use the wind tunnel, and a lot of times there is sort of a discussion about how much emphasis can you put on one thing versus the other thing. And I made some quick notes, mostly because a lot of people are interested in the price, or I think sometimes the feedback that I get from people is, well, I'd really like to use the tunnel, but it seems really expensive. And I think that relates to the fact that you have to plunk down a chunk at one time. Like, if you're going to get our team coaches at iFly Utah, and if you're going to get an hour of coach tunnel time, that's $800. And so maybe that seems like an expensive way to learn to skydive. I actually wrote a paper about this about 15 years ago. But just to highlight a couple of things to start about with the cost. $800 can seem like a lot if you think about, well, I'm just going to make one payment. I'm going to buy an hour, or maybe you're going to go and really go for it, and you're going to buy 5 hours, and you're going to spend, $4,000, and really make a ton of improvements in a short period of time. But if you go to iFly Utah, I can't in good conscience promote going to any of the corporate tunnels right now, but there are franchises. I think there's maybe 7. There's a iFly Utah, XP in North Carolina, El Paso, Eloy. Who else is a franchise? Somebody help me out. Virginia Beach, that's 5.
Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs is open now. That's 6. I feel like there's a couple more that I'm missing. Oceanside, I think, is a franchise. That's 7. Might be one more. Anyway, I can't quote the prices for all of those tunnels. I think they're probably a little bit more. El Paso's pretty cheap, but probably most of them are a little bit more than iFly Utah at $800 an hour. So if you divide 800 by 60, you get a per minute price of $13 and 0.33 repeating. So about $13.25 for a coached minute of tunnel time. Coached minute. So if you then think about your skydiving, that you're going to get coached skydiving, that's about a 45-second free fall or usable working time. Most drop zones on average are about $30 for a jump ticket. So you're going to buy your ticket, you're going to buy your coach's ticket, and you're going to pay a coaching fee. Probably $40 is an absolute minimum, but it might go up from there. But I used 40. And then if you're going quick, you're going to pay for pack jobs. That's $8 for you and $8 for the coach. So that's 30 times 2 is 60 plus 40 for the fee is 100, and that gives you with packing a 116 per 45 seconds as a cost. And if you do some quick math, that is roughly $154.50 per minute of coached time in the sky, or 11.6 times the price of tunnel, which I think is is something that everybody should be paying attention to. Everybody, for the most part, not everybody, but a lot of people work with a budget, most people. And so you're trying to think about, how can I maximize the money that I spend in a way that most improves my skydiving? And I would argue that that's going to be a lot of money spent in the tunnel and then some money spent in the sky. And I guess I should be clear as we're talking about this, that the tunnel for me is a tool. I mean, it's really fun to sort of explore the three-dimensional space that machine offers you, especially some of the bigger ones, Paraclete, or even if you go to Abu Dhabi, that's just crazy big, and super fun to go bombing up and down and sort of explore the machine. But if I had to give up one, for sure, I would not fly in the tunnel anymore. If someone said, hey, you can only do one for the rest of your life, I would go skydive, and 100%. But since nobody's holding a gun to my head with that choice, I'm definitely going to choose to train as often as I can in the tunnel at a very cheap price, and then try and use those skills that I acquire in the sky where it's more expensive. And so, people approach me or our team at Skydive Chicago and say, hey, can I get coached jumps? And for sure the answer is yes, you can get coached jumps, but a lot of times I will try and steer them, hey, let's go fly in the tunnel a little bit over the winter, so you can save a little bit of money, and then you don't necessarily need to spend all your money on getting coach jumps from me. You should still skydive, but then just paying for your own slot and going jump with your friends and having good jumps. So I wanted to outline that because sometimes I do hear people say that the tunnel is expensive, and to me that's totally antithetical. It just doesn't make any sense when you really think about the money that you're spending. Okay, the other interesting things about using the tunnel versus using the sky. When you skydive and you want to get coaching in the sky, you're gonna take a 20-minute plane ride, and you're gonna go up and you're gonna try something that hopefully your coach is telling you what to do, and you're gonna spend 45 seconds in free fall, and then you're gonna land. And probably the minimum amount of time before you start learning again is 20 minutes. And that's if you're turning back to backs, you have 2 rigs, your coach has 2 rigs, you're ready to pay for packing. You know what, sorry, when I was on the cost, there was one number I forgot to give you guys. I just wanted to highlight, when you think that tunnel is expensive at $800 an hour, when you extend the price of $154.50 at the relatively cheap coaching rate of $40 per jump, that gives you a 1 hour price of $9,270, quite a bit more than $800 for an hour of coach tunnel time. So if you're really angling to do an hour of coached free fall, hopefully you're not one of those people who operates on a budget. So, okay, back to you're going to get coaching in the sky. You're going to go up in the air. You're going to spend 45 seconds in free fall. You're going to come down. At minimum, you're going to do a 20-minute turnaround riding a relatively fast airplane up to altitude. So your 45 seconds of learning is then separated from the next 45-second segment by at least 20 minutes. And if you're not 2-rig kind of person, you're not jumping back-to-backs, then you could be looking at 40 minutes or an hour in between each of your coaching segments. By contrast, when you're in the tunnel, you're going to do, conservatively 1.5 minutes, maybe 2-minute rotations. 2 minutes is pretty common. And so you're going to have 2 minutes of learning that's going to happen, and then it's going to be separated by your next learning segment by hopefully a minimum of 2 minutes, but maybe something more like 4 will give you a chance to breathe and watch your video, and then you're going to get right back in the tunnel. And so your 10 minutes of coach time is going to happen in a 30-minute block. And so you get to pack all of that learning in a really short period of time, which for most people works better than 45 seconds and then 20 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour where you think about life, or you're getting audited, or your girlfriend's breaking up with you, or whatever. And then you got to refocus on learning, whereas you were in the tunnel for 30 minutes and you can really be sharp on what you're doing. And not only that, but in that time that you're resting, you're probably watching other people fly, which in itself is a learning tool because you're in a real low stress environment. You can sort of see what the coach is trying to do and what their communication style is, and you're picking up quite a bit of information from what they're telling to the other people. When you jump out of the plane, if you don't have a strong relationship with your coach, or your coach hasn't spent a bunch of time working in the wind tunnel as a coach, their communication could be a little bit suspect. If they've spent a lot of time in the wind tunnel, then they become accustomed to speaking in a way that people can understand by easily reading lips and using hand signals that are coordinated with those words. What are you saying, Trace? But if they just coach in free fall, a lot of times the communication can be really tough, and it can take a while to establish even a baseline of I understand what that coach is saying. Where in the wind tunnel, typically that process happens really quickly. Probably the first 10 minutes, you understand what your coach is saying. You've got a good idea of what they're trying to communicate to you. Another thing is stress level that people have to think about when they're choosing those two learning methodologies. For most people, I think experienced skydivers, when you leave the plane, probably your stress level drops from having to ride around in that hunky bit of metal. But the ground is coming and there's a parachute ride and you've got to pay attention to altitude. And so your stress level can be a little bit more elevated than when you're in the tunnel and you're close to the net. The ground is not coming. You're kind of already close to it. If you overshoot your time in free fall by 10 seconds, it's not that big of an issue. You don't have a canopy ride. You just got to get back into the antechamber. If in your 2 minutes of tunnel time, you're not understanding what the coach is saying to you, and the communication's not as good as you'd like, you can say, I don't understand. You can pause the time and get into the antechamber and use words, and you can hear your coach speak. Whereas if you're just not getting what the coach is saying when you're in free fall, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to pause that skydive and have some communication about what's really supposed to be happening. So I don't know if I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about as far as benefits of using the wind tunnel as a tool, but hopefully that's a good start for people on how you might be able to use those two things. And since I make my living through skydiving, I'm not trying to talk anybody out of jumping, for sure. Again, I would never give up skydiving. And if the only way that we can learn is to go out and jump in the sky, then I'll happily be coaching people in the sky. But to think about a few years back when in the 90s, the late 90s, when Rook was part of an attempt at the first head down world record, which I believe he told me was an 18-way, and they didn't get it. And it took quite a while to put together an 18-way. And I'm going to guess conservatively that everybody that was participating in there had, I don't know, I'd say at minimum 5,000 jumps, and probably most of them were closer to 10, because that was the amount of time that it took you to be able to comfortably fly in your head and take docks and be able to think about building a formation. An 18-way, which we could do most weekends at Skydive Chicago. If we rounded up everybody, we could successfully do probably a multi-point 18-way. And we're gearing up for a 200-way this summer. And when we go to run tryout camps, and I'll talk to people who are participating, certainly there's people with thousands of jumps, but there's also people with hundreds of jumps. For instance, Steph went to her first women's record, the first one they tried to have, which was a 20-way, and she had, I don't know, just over 200 jumps, maybe 210 or 215, something like that. And she was one of the better flyers there because she was a tunnel instructor. And so the way that tunnel has moved our sport forward is visible in almost every aspect. I don't know if it's done a lot for canopy stuff, but even some of the more fringe stuff like wingsuiting, which I guess is not that fringe, but you can fly a wingsuit in tunnel if you're really good. I've seen people do it. You can fly tracksuits in the tunnel. You can fly head up and head down, and belly flying has gone crazy. So just real quickly, but I haven't seen any chat. Have you seen anybody type a message?
Yeah.
Question?
And we only have 2 minutes because we got started so late.
Okay.
But Mark had
So what are the questions?
Mark's question was thoughts on tunnel versus sky if you're like a new team versus an experienced team.
I mean, we use the tunnel all the time as a quite experienced team. But as a new team, I think it's even more important because of the way that the tunnel confines your space, and it also gives you the ability to, in a much clearer way, to put a camera, even the side camera from the tunnel. But if you can get a net mount, you're going to get really good information about what you're doing personally and how your team is flying, how the blocks are turning. That you especially if your camera flyer's new in the sky, you just don't get the same level of information. So vitally important in the beginning, and then as you get better, vitally important. What's the next one?
That was the only one we've gotten so far.
Okay, so let me talk about some of the tough parts about training in the tunnel.
Okay, we have 1 minute, and then we're gonna get cut off.
1 minute. What you really need to do if you're going to be crazy about the tunnel is put a rig on. In the wind tunnel, you need to go to a non-corporate tunnel, get a rig cover, and fly your rig in the tunnel. You must do that to realistically take your tunnel skills into the sky. The difficulty can be when you try to backfly, even with your rig. Hopefully it'll make you laugh as much as it makes me laugh every time it happens, as it slams me into the wall, because my rig shifts over and just drives me one way, and I have to this huge side slide to try and counteract it. And then head up flying can be challenging, not nearly as bad as back flying, but definitely you need to put a rig on. When you're head down, when you're belly, it doesn't really affect you nearly as much, but those back and sit, you really need to practice with the rig on.
Okay, another speed question. What should someone think about going from the tube to the sky? So if they've learned in the tunnel, like who or how should he have people help prep him to go into the sky?
Well, I mean, I kind of just touched on that, but you just need to be aware that when you're head up and back flying, your rig can really affect where you're at. And especially when you're